Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, September 21st. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Some good news when it comes to COVID-19. Rates of coronavirus infections are falling statewide. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says compared to the nation, California is leading the way.
CDC data shows every state in the U.S. has a high level of virus transmission, except for California.
So I think it's a reflection that the state and county governments have done a good job of getting the message out and implementing restrictions when they were needed.
California is the most populous state, but its level of community transmission is listed as substantial, at an average of 95 cases per 100,000 residents. Dr. Mark Sawyer is an infectious disease specialist at UC San Diego Health and Rady Children's Hospital. With just under 70% of Californians fully vaccinated, he's predicting some more spikes in cases, but
I'm confident that we're over the worst of things, particularly in California, because we have a pretty high vaccine rate.
Sawyer sits on the FDA advisory committee that recommended booster shots for those over 65 and at high risk for catching the virus, like healthcare workers. He expects a similar advisory panel to the CDC to follow their lead later this week.
My anticipation is that CDC is going to follow the lead of the FDA committee and recommend that at least we start giving boosters to seniors and other high-risk groups. And once that recommendation sort of becomes public information, the vaccine is out there. We have the supply.
The county's own case rate tracker shows majority of the region with a high transmission rate, with substantial and moderate transmission in some areas. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Students at UC San Diego start classes Thursday in person for the first time since the COVID shutdown in March of 2020. Today was the beginning of the massive move-in to on-campus housing. KPBS education reporter MG Perez was there and tells us more about life at the university amid the pandemic.
In the sea of students flooding the UC San Diego campus today, there are clear signs everywhere that COVID-19 is still with us. This fall, masks and mandates are just as important as studying and grade point average. 18-year-old Justin Leong is a freshman moving into the dorms with help from his mother and father. They are a fully vaccinated family who traveled here from their home in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I'm definitely excited to be learning in person and getting the experience that I didn't get to have my last year of high school.
Justin is one of more than 32,000 students enrolled this semester. They are all required to be vaccinated with very limited medical exceptions. The university is also moving some classes outdoors, testing wastewater for COVID, and masks are not negotiable, which is some comfort to Justin's mother.
That's the only thing that really I'm worried about my son being in campus. But at the same time, I'm excited that he gets to meet like friends.
UCSD has taken a lead in COVID protocols since the initial shutdown in March 2020. That leadership continues this fall. Even vaccinated students will be required to take a COVID test once a week for the first month of classes. Unvaccinated students will be tested twice a week.
I'm confident because we're in community through the contributions of our students, faculty, and staff, and then adapting based on what we learn from the science.
The Leongs are happy their son is part of this community where he will study chemical engineering. His mother leaves him with some simple advice.
Just always make the right decision, be smart, and and we're always here for him.
Reassuring words in a challenging time of uncertainty. MG Perez, KPBS News.
In an effort to provide some flexibility to its staff and students, the Chula Vista Elementary School District is making some changes to its masking rules. The district school board has approved teachers to remove their masks when alone in their classrooms or offices. Teachers teaching virtual students will be able to remove their masks if there are only 2 people in the room. Those classrooms will be provided with a second air filter. The board also approved allowing students to take off their masks while outside in recess, PE, exercising, or playing. As of September 17th, the district recorded 5 COVID cases among staff and 39 among its students. The subject of mask wearing disrupted the district board meeting at the Poway Unified School District earlier this month, and now those meetings will take place strictly online. The district cited the safety of its staff and its board members. On September 10th, protesters forced their way into district offices, refusing to leave the district board meeting. The board had planned to talk about safety protocols and public health guidance updates before the disruption. The next board meeting will be held virtually online on October 14th. From COVID to climate change, President Joe Biden urged world leaders to rally together. He did so addressing the United Nations General Assembly for the first time since taking office. Chris Nguyen with more on that and blowback over the withdrawal from Afghanistan and other major issues.
Calling it a decisive decade for our world, President Joe Biden delivered his first speech to the United Nations since taking office, presenting his long-term vision for the global community.
No matter how challenging or how complex the problems we're going to face, government by and for the people is still the best way to deliver for all of our people.
The gathering of the General Assembly amounting to a major credibility test for the president, currently facing international blowback over mounting issues, including the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Biden defended the decision while looking ahead.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy.
Reasserting America's leadership on issues like climate change, global health, and fighting hunger at home and abroad.
As we look ahead, we will lead. We will lead on all the greatest challenges of our time, from COVID to climate, peace and security, human dignity and human rights, but we will not go alone.
The UN Secretary General calling this point in history a moment of truth, urging nations to unite.
Solidarity is missing in action just when we need it most.
And inspire hope for the greater good.
The problems we have created are problems we can solve. Humanity has shown that we are capable of great things when we work together.
In Washington, Chris Nguyen, KPBS News.
San Diegans will soon be paying more for water. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says the City Council approved a new set of water and sewer rates that will also see some folks paying less.
There's no getting around it. Water is an increasingly scarce resource in San Diego, and it's getting more expensive. The 3% increase in the city's water rates is to compensate for rising rates charged by the city's water wholesalers and the continuing need to repair aging pipelines.
And I know that this is not something that is going to be easy for a lot of people. I also know that we have to maintain our systems, because it could be a lot worse on the other end if we do not.
The changes to the city's sewer fees are a bit more complicated. Right now, single-family homes are charged lower wastewater rates than apartments or businesses. The city determined that was unfair, so it's lowering sewer rates for businesses and apartments. Now they'll pay the same rates as single-family homeowners, who will start paying more.
It's always difficult to increase rates. Asking ratepayers to contribute another penny is never ideal because we live in one of the least affordable regions in the United States. But we have a duty as elected officials to make those hard decisions that councils past have failed to do, which is to present you, the public, with the current reality.
That current reality, the city's water and wastewater infrastructure is in bad shape, and the city needs more money to fix it. The rate changes will start taking effect in January, with increases phased in through 2025. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
More and more people are dying from overdoses of meth and fentanyl in San Diego County. KPBS reporter John Carroll has more on the staggering numbers and what the county is doing about it.
During a pandemic, it's easy to overlook, but listening to San Diego County Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Stephen Kampman focuses the mind on a crisis in our midst.
The number of deaths due to methamphetamine is continuing to increase. More deaths this year than before. The deaths due to fentanyl has hugely increased.
Dr. Kampman's calm demeanor belies the magnitude of the problem. The information comes from the just-released report cards from the Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force and the Meth Strike Force. Over the last 5 years, total meth-caused deaths jumped from 377 to 722, a 92% increase. The situation with fentanyl is even more dire. 33 deaths in 2016, up to 462 in 2020, a staggering 1,300% jump. Dr. Kampman says people often buy fentanyl injected into counterfeit pills of oxycodone or Xanax. That highlights a larger cautionary tale that you never know what you're getting when you buy drugs on the street.
We've seen people who thought they bought cocaine and died of fentanyl toxicity, and there was no cocaine in them at all.
Overdoses from meth and fentanyl primarily kill men from their mid-30s to their mid-60s, but perhaps more disturbingly, the crisis isn't limited to adults.
The hospitals have seen infants and little kids in the emergency rooms experiencing fentanyl toxicity.
If you're struggling with addiction or know someone who is, help is available. Go to the website you see on your screen, or you can call 888-724-7240, and that information will be in our web version of this story at kpbs.org. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Conditions at the U.S.-Mexico border are expected to change dramatically in the next 48 to 96 hours. This, according to the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary, as the humanitarian crisis grows in Texas. More now from Camila Bernal.
Border Patrol agents on horseback appearing to use aggressive tactics when confronting migrants. This Al Jazeera video causing concern within the Biden administration.
I was horrified by what I saw. I'm going to let the investigation run its course, but the pictures that I observed troubled me profoundly.
Thousands of migrants, many of them Haitian, still gathered under the Del Rio International Bridge in Texas.
It's an impossible situation, which absolutely has to get corrected with a policy change.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said the department would investigate the situation and said a dramatic change at the border is expected in the next 48 to 96 hours.
We are moving more migrants very quickly to other processing centers so that we can ensure their security and safety and the security and safety of the community.
But many hoping more is done to address immigration beyond the current situation.
There needs to be more enforcement of our current laws, but it also needs to happen at a much quicker rate. At this point, we shouldn't be Republicans or Democrats. We need to come together, and we need to get through this crisis together.
Camila Bernal, KPBS News.
International travel has been taking a major hit during the pandemic, but new guidelines may give the industry the jump start it has been waiting for. Jen Sullivan has a closer look at the new rules and how it may impact the economy.
New travel guidelines expected to give international travel a major boost after lagging badly during the pandemic. The U.S. is now easing restrictions on fully vaccinated foreign travelers from the U.K. and European Union, among other countries entering the U.S.
We are very happy about this. We've been pushing on this now for almost 18 months.
The American Society of Travel Advisors joining other industry groups in praising the changes. Starting in November, all international travelers must show they're fully vaccinated before boarding a plane to the U.S. Also, provide proof of a negative COVID-19 test within 3 days of the flight. And under the new rules, they will not be required to quarantine.
In our view, the science has been there to support a system like this for a long time.
The travel industry is celebrating the news. Airlines, hotels, and travel agencies all hoping this will help them recover from huge economic losses.
This is going to supercharge the travel industry's recovery. This is absolutely one of the key parts of the recovery is restarting the international travel system on which so many of our members depend.
And this may not be just a boost for the U.S. economy. The holidays are around the corner, and in some cases, this travel ban separated families since it was put into place early 2020 to control the spread of COVID-19.
This is important economically. It's also important psychologically, too, for folks to be able to look forward to seeing friends and family after 18 months.
For Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
In addition to requiring vaccinations, the Biden administration says it's taking other steps to mitigate spread of the virus through testing, contact tracing, and masking. The CDC plans to issue a contact tracing order requiring airlines to collect phone numbers and email addresses from travelers in case of potential exposure. The car in your driveway is in high demand if you're willing to sell. Car dealers have been dealing with a shortage of parts for months, and it hasn't gotten any better in the recent weeks. Locally, prices have jumped several $1,000s over the past year for an average used car, now approaching $25,000.
New car production could get back to a level that meets new car demand. Then people who have current cars that are looking to trade them in would start trading them in to get their new car, and used car supply would go up. So it really all tracks back to this global microchip shortage.
If you need a new or used car right now, experts say to cast a wide net and be prepared to travel 100 or 200 miles away for a vehicle that is in high demand. Homeowners and renters in Northern California impacted by the wildfires will not have to worry about losing their property insurance policies for the next year. State law temporarily bans insurance companies from dropping customers in zip codes next to or within areas of declared wildfire disaster. Governor Newsom has issued 6 state of emergency declarations since late July, covering 22 counties. About 325,000 policyholders live near the wildfires. Summer in San Diego County is going out with a bang. A heat advisory is in effect for the inland valleys through tomorrow night, and temperatures elsewhere in the county could also be above average. But relief could be on the way. Jessica Pash has your forecast.
Temperatures are going to remain quite warm here through the rest of today and into your day on Wednesday, too. And with that, heat advisories do remain in effect, but we'll see some changes here later in the week. We'll get some moisture arriving with the system moving onshore, and along with it, some showers and thunderstorms will be possible, but they'll mainly be isolated in nature, so nothing widespread in the forecast here. For now, heat advisories in effect here all the way through Wednesday evening, so not only through today, but through tomorrow. And then after that, temperatures are actually going to drop off. For tonight, we drop down into the upper 50s for you in Oceanside, upper 50s in Ramona, Borrego Springs, getting down to 73 there for your overnight low. And we'll continue to see that warmth here even as we head into Wednesday. An upper level high kind of in control here, and so the heat continues to build on in. But changes are on the way as we move towards Thursday. Oceanside, 83 degrees for your high on Wednesday, 83 in San Diego as well. El Cajon getting up to 97, mid-70s for you in the mountains there in Mount Laguna. And then here's that change. We're going to be watching this wave of low pressure coming onshore. Steering wind's going to be off of the Pacific here, bringing in some moisture, but it does look like for the most part, it's going to be a relatively moisture-starved system. So we're not talking about a lot of rain here. What we will be seeing is gusty winds, likely a good bit of cloud to ground lightning, and along with that, the risk for new wildfires to spread here across southern portions of California. So a little bit of a double-edged sword here, where some will get the rain and others will get an increased risk for fire danger. Near the coast, temperatures fall off from the low 80s on Wednesday into the mid-70s by the time we get towards Friday and Saturday. Further inland, not a whole lot of change when it comes to the cloud cover, but we will drop from the mid-90s into the low 80s by the time we get into this weekend. In the mountains, a couple storms possible there on your Thursday. Otherwise, it's just a cooling trend here from the mid-70s on Wednesday back into the 60s for the rest of the weekend into the weekend. And in the deserts, too, temperatures are going to drop off, likely back down into the upper 90s for the most part over the next several days, with a straight thunderstorm possible Thursday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
And of course, it's been really hot in San Diego this September, but for families hoping to cool off at one of the city's 13 public pools, well, they're out of luck. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tregesser found that the city has drastically cut back its weekend pool hours since 2019.
You want to do backwards or forwards? Wow, look at it.
Sharon Reeser and her 3-year-old daughter Clara are practicing their swimming at a public pool in Tirasana. It's past 5 o'clock on a Friday, and Clara's lips are turning a little blue. It's late in the day for swimming, but they're fitting it in when they can. That's because this pool is not open on weekends.
Saturday swimming would be great because it's difficult with work schedules and school schedules to make it to swim sessions that are during the day.
But across the city, there are hardly any weekend pool hours where kids can swim, and that's a big cutback from previous years. The city of San Diego has 13 public pools. In September 2019, all but one of them had weekend recreational swim hours. In total, across all city pools, there were 50 hours when kids could swim on the weekends. Pools were mostly closed last summer due to COVID. Now, this September, there are just 3 pools with recreational swim hours in Claremont, La Jolla, and San Ysidro. Each pool is open for 2.5 to 5 hours total each weekend.
I was planning to go to that pool on Saturday. I thought as I was pulling out, I should call and see if it is open.
Scott Pollock recently brought his 4-year-old son Felix to the city pool in Tirasana on a Saturday. The website said it was open, but it wasn't.
There is a level of frustration with it not being open, but more so there's a frustration around the level and lack of communication.
The pool had switched from its summer hours to fall hours, but hadn't changed the website. Many of the city's public pools ended their weekend hours after Labor Day. That despite the fact that September is usually one of the hottest months in San Diego, with higher average temperatures than in June or July. And in previous years, city pools stayed open on weekends in September.
So it's very important for children to be physically active.
Noe Crespo is a public health professor at San Diego State University. He says children of color and children in lower income neighborhoods are less likely to know how to swim and less likely to be physically active overall.
It's an unfortunate scenario that depending on where your child lives, then that will determine if they have access to a pool, if they have access to sports.
He says exercise helps kids physically, but also improves their mental health and performance in school. And cities should be responsible for providing those facilities to their residents.
Cities are responsible to provide the resources in different locations and to look at also equity.
A spokesperson for the city of San Diego wouldn't do an interview about the change in pool hours, but he sent an email saying the change is because the city is short-staffed. This is actually a nationwide issue, not only with pools and lifeguards, but with many businesses that utilize young workers to provide services to their customers, he said. The reality is, without the aquatic staff to provide programming and pool guard duties, it's not possible to keep the facilities as open as long as we'd like and provide a safe environment for the public. The city pays pool lifeguards $15 to $17 an hour. To staff weekend pools at previous levels would cost less than $10,000 a year, according to the most recent city budget.
Good swimming.
Sharon Reeser, the Tirasana resident, is also thinking about costs. Since she can't go to her local city pool on the weekends, she's left with buying day passes at private pools, which could cost $60 for her family of 4, or joining the YMCA.
It's expensive, whereas the city pools, they're fun, they get great facilities.
Her daughter Clara would especially like to use the splash pad at the Tirasana pool, but it's only open a few days a week from noon to 3, when Clara is in school. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
And KPBS reporter John Carroll and KPBS investigative assistant Katie Stiegel contributed to this story. Scientists have created a paint that they say can help fight climate change. These 2 tiles might look the same to you, but one is actually the world's whitest paint. Researchers at Purdue University who created it say the paint can work like an air conditioner. It was made to reflect 98% of sunlight, which is more than it absorbs. That makes the surface cooler than its surroundings. Most paints currently on the market only reflect about 80% of sunlight, and they get warmer instead of cooler.
NewsHour, President Biden addresses the UN. We talk with Bill Gates about the effects of COVID and climate change. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. California now has the lowest COVID transmission rates in the country. CDC data shows the statewide level of community transmission listed as substantial at an average of 95 cases per 100,000 residents. Every other state has a high level of transmission. Experts attribute California's success in part to its high vaccination rate, just under 70%. Today was the beginning of a massive move-in to on-campus housing at UC San Diego. In-person classes start on Thursday for the first time since the COVID shutdown back in March 2020. The university is taking several precautions, including moving some classes outdoors, testing wastewater for COVID, and mandatory masking. All students must be fully vaccinated in order to attend classes on campus. And San Diegans will soon be paying more for water. The 3% increase approved today by the City Council is to compensate for rising rates charged by water wholesalers and the need to repair aging pipelines. Changes to the city's sewer fees mean single-family homes, businesses, and apartments will all pay the same rate for wastewater. The changes take effect in January. And as always, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.